And I'm Michelle Martin.
And I'm Mary Dixon on Chicago's NPR news station. This is 91.5 WBEZ. It's 5:49. Coming up in the news at 6 o'clock. City data shows many Chicagoans are using open fire hydrants to cool off during this week's heat wave. Later, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is expected to unveil measures targeting the huge amounts of cash generated by international drug networks selling fentanyl on the streets of the U.S. More on that story is coming up in 15 minutes.
MLB pays tribute to the Negro Leagues at the historic Rickwood Field, home to the Birmingham Black Barons, as the Giants and Cardinals play the first regular season baseball game there. Next time on Here and Now.
This morning at 11 on WBEZ.
The Marketplace Morning Report is coming up next on 91.5 WBEZ. In the news at 5:51, a coalition of organizations on Chicago's West Side organized a Juneteenth Day of Service yesterday. They helped people affected by flooding last July. Crews cleared out mold for seniors whose basements were damaged by the record rainfall on July 2nd of last year. The Westside Long-Term Recovery Group said the response to that disaster has been slow. On this first day of astronomical summer, I guess you'd say, we're expecting partly cloudy skies, chance of showers and thunderstorms, and a high of 88 degrees. It's going to be cooler by the lake, slight chance of rain tonight and tomorrow, with a low tonight of 67 degrees.
The families of Boeing crash victims want the company to pay.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Schwab, helping people invest in ideas they believe in with Schwab investing themes, with more than 40 themes to choose from. More at schwab.com. And by Total Wine and More. Total Wine and More, helping shoppers love what they find at TotalWine.com. Spirits not sold in Virginia or North Carolina. Drink responsibly. Be 21.
From Marketplace, I'm Nancy Marshall-Genzer in for David Brancaccio. Families of some of the victims of the Boeing 737 MAX crashes are asking the Justice Department to prosecute the company and to seek a criminal fine of almost $25 billion. This is the latest chapter in a years-long effort to reopen the criminal case against Boeing. Marketplace's Nova Safo has more.
In a letter to Justice Department prosecutors, a lawyer representing crash victims' families said Boeing had committed, quote, the deadliest corporate crime in U.S. history when it failed to disclose the extent of a software flaw on its new 737 MAX planes and its associated dangers. Because of that flaw, 2 MAX planes crashed just months apart in 2018 and 2019. Everyone on board, 346 people, died. Boeing reached a deferred prosecution agreement over the MAX crashes, which the Justice Department now says the company violated. Victims' families want Boeing prosecuted and fined $25 billion. Much of that money could be deferred to safety and quality improvements. Victims' families also want some of Boeing's leadership at the time of the crashes prosecuted. That includes former CEO Dennis Muhlenberg. The Justice Department is reevaluating its options following an incident in January when a panel blew off a MAX plane's fuselage mid-flight. Since then, multiple whistleblowers have come forward with concerns about cut corners and quality control lapses. Prosecutors say they'll make a decision by July 7 on whether to criminally charge the company. I'm Nova Safo for Marketplace.
Global fossil fuel consumption and carbon emissions reached record highs last year. That's according to a new industry report from the Energy Institute. The Statistical Review of World Energy report showed fossil fuel consumption rose 1.5% from 2022. That's despite a big increase in renewable energy consumption. The report underscores how many growing economies around the world still depend on fossil fuels. The BBC's Clitzia Sala has more.
The report found that while consumption of fossil fuels was peaking in advanced economies, developing economies were increasingly reliant on coal, gas and oil. The share of fossil fuels in Europe's energy mix has fallen below 70% for the first time since the Industrial Revolution. One of the report's authors, Nick Waith, said the world is simply not moving fast enough in the energy transition. He said last year's growth in fossil fuel use was mainly led by China, even as it has been rapidly rolling out renewable power. For the first time, India's coal consumption has exceeded that of Europe and North America combined.
That's Cleetsia Sala with our newsroom partners at the BBC. Let's do the numbers. The FTSE in London is up a fraction. The Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ futures are up in the 1.23% range, with the Dow future up more than 50 points. The 10-year Treasury yield is down at 4.25%.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Bitwarden Password Manager for Business, designed for those who work at home and those who work at work. Learn more at bitwarden.com/business.
Cannabis is now legal for medical or adult recreational use in 38 states and the District of Columbia. It's grown into a $30 billion business, but marijuana remains illegal at the federal level, even though the DEA is reclassifying it as less dangerous. That means there are some stringent rules governing the transportation of cannabis that can leave some parts of the industry stranded on islands, sometimes literally. Marketplace's Daniel Ackerman hopped onto a ferry to Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts, where cannabis supply hasn't quite been meeting demand.
For business owners here on the island, June usually marks the start of tourism season, which is to say, money-making season. That's not been the case this year for Jeff Rose.
So normally this cabinet is filled with product.
The shelves are bare at Island Time Cannabis Dispensary. Nothing to see, nothing to smell.
We've been closed since May 14, so the aroma has subsided.
Rose ran out of stock after the island's only licensed pot grower shut down. The state worried the feds wouldn't approve of moving cannabis by boat, so they prohibited it. Growers on the mainland couldn't ship to the vineyard.
We sold down to the last 14 chocolate bars and closed the doors. We were really in a crisis situation. I was going to go out of business.
And that would have impacted more than just tourists hoping to unwind with a joint on the beach.
It's a question of health access.
Sally Rizzo lives on the vineyard. She's retired, and she has a medical cannabis prescription for insomnia and chronic back pain.
I'm not as bad off as a lot of people. I mean, just think about people that are under cancer treatment. They just don't have access to what other people have in the state. And it's just very, very unfortunate.
Unfortunate, but not uncommon in the pot industry, or rather, industries.
You have this weird market structure where every single state has its own unique cannabis industry.
Rob Mikos is a law professor at Vanderbilt. He says California and Hawaii allow cannabis to move by boat, but only from one part of the state to the other. Crossing state lines is still prohibited, even between states where pot is legal.
States, to some extent, fear that if they ship product across state lines, they're going to sort of poke the hornet's nest and provoke the federal government coming in and shutting down their industry.
So states have ruled you can grow it and sell it here, but nothing comes in, nothing goes out. But those rules might run afoul of a clause in the Constitution, says Mikos.
Think of it as a free trade principle in the United States. It says states can't unduly burden interstate commerce in goods.
Florida, for example, can't ban oranges from California. Mikos says when it comes to limiting cannabis transport,
there's a good argument to be made that some of these state laws could be challenged.
And they have been, with some success. California, Oregon, and Washington have all recently passed bills to allow interstate transport, but only if the federal government agrees. So for now, pot markets remain siloed, with each state working out its own issues. Last week, Massachusetts approved transport by boat. For dispensary owner Jeff Rose, that meant
a combination of elation and relief. It's really both.
His next step, finding a grower who can ship pot from the mainland as soon as possible. I'm Daniel Ackerman for Marketplace.
And in Washington, I'm Nancy Marshall-Genzer with the Marketplace Morning Report. From 8 p.m., I'm Marshall-Genzer with the Marketplace.